Welcome everyone to this conversation being hosted by the Observer Research Foundation with Major Navdeep Singh. He's an advocate in the Punjab High Court. He's been a member of many tribunals and committees which have worked on and made recommendations on military modernization, especially the manpower aspects of it. And I know, well, the border confrontation with China is very topical, but every time there's a confrontation, we also talk about how can we best reform our military for the conflicts that are to come. And I'm going to jump straight in with a question. And there've been a lot of discussions on how manpower costs have become unmanageable for the Indian Armed Forces. Multiple committees have made many recommendations on how to cut down the size of the armed forces. But what do you feel are the key challenges that the armed forces are facing in terms of, balancing the reduction of manpower while ensuring operational effectiveness and obviously balancing the budget?
See, these issues which are coming up are really very important, and sometimes we hear voices that no big deal. If we want a good system of defense, we have to afford the manpower. But that's not actually a balanced way of looking at it, because for modernization and to invest in good machines, you really need to balance out the manpower to an optimum level. And at the last committee, which was an all-round committee with members of the military as well as the bureaucracy and the finance aspect and the diplomacy, was the General Secretary's Committee. And the interesting part in that was that the committee recommended that if things need to be seen holistically, then the entire recommendations need to be seen as a whole and not implemented in a piecemeal manner. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to rationalize the manpower, and there are many things which can be outsourced. The second thing which we need to do is that what the current Chief of Defense Staff is also looking at, rationalize the retirement ages of especially the lower ranks. And number 3 comes the pension bill, ultimately, which is also a very important aspect, a very emotive aspect. And we need to harmonize the entire system without any heartburn and without causing any damage to existing pensioners. On modernization and manpower, like I said, the last committee, they have made some very pertinent recommendations. But we always need to remember that the machines cannot entirely replace manpower. So what can be done? Things such as outsourcing, for example, and you'll find that in non-sensitive areas or non-operational or non-strategic areas, there are many places wherein the manpower can be outsourced. For example, in the US, you have the contractor system. You can have a system akin to that. But it is true that sometimes full-time employees of the government are a little expensive than outsourced employees. And not trying to belittle any particular trade or any particular profession. For example, if you see that if you pay a full-time driver or a peon in the government side, you'll be paying a much higher amount of, or paying a multitasker or what you call the multitask staff, MTS. So if you're paying them as government employees, in the form of government employees, the payout is much higher. But if you outsource it, and from the open market, let's compare a driver in a government organization and a driver outside. What would be the cost difference? The cost difference would be huge at places that maybe even 3 times if you calculate the entire cost. Similarly, there may be other trades and other manning options where you may have to go in for. And also, we must remember that sometimes at some places we are overstaffed, and what it's called the law of diminishing returns. So if you have overstaffing at a place, ultimately the productivity starts coming down. So there are places wherein 1 or 2 persons are better equipped to handle a particular situation or a particular task, and they'll give out better productivity than placing 10 people on the same job or in the same office. So all these things have to be holistically viewed, and as I said, the current CDS is trying to look at rationalizing retirement ages. That is also very important. We hear from many veterans that we should not tinker with this, etc., etc. But let's remember there's a very valid thumb rule on this. That let's not look at the infantry only. There are many trades, technical trades, and other software duties which a person can perform at a higher age bracket also. So when you're retiring a person early, say after 17 years of service or 19 years of service, you retire him and you start paying him pension. And then you recruit another one. And then you start paying pain allowances to that other person. So there's a double jeopardy kind of a thing, wherein you're paying the new person his pain allowances, and the old person, the one who retired, his pension. So you make that person serve for say 10 years more in a particular trade, and you don't end up with two payments. You are only paying one person his pain allowances, and you also defer the pension bill for that particular person for about 10 years more. And it's a doable thing. Even in the past, we've had terms of engagement such as 32 years, 34 years, 36 years. Even currently in the Air Force and the Navy, we have longer terms. So it can be done. So it's a bringing down the manpower bill and the pension bill. It is not a straitjacket formula, but however it can be done, it is practically possible.
And just following up on that, you mentioned how the CDS and the army chiefs have been working on reducing the pension bill, the salary component of the defense budget. Something that has been really doing the rounds in the news lately have been this idea which has been mooted called the tour of duty, which is a short 3-year engagement for civilians to get a taste of army life and fill a manpower void, so to speak, without having to pay pensions for them. Do you think this is a very practical solution wherein you train soldiers and officers for 1 year and then have them only serve 3 years in the armed forces?
See, to put it crudely and very frankly, it's a harebrained idea. I heard that the CDS and the army chief are in favor. I don't think the CDS is in favor. And even the army chief is a very, very mature military leader. Once he's informed of the pitfalls, he spoke about it at a seminar in the IDSA. So to me, it seems that, it's a bright morning idea by someone in good English with a video game-ish kind of a concept called tour of duty, very American sounding. And looks impressive, when you look at it at the first glance, but you have to scratch the surface and you have to lift the wheel. And I'm sure when the army chief is also informed about, the four corners of the proposal, I'm sure he'll also not agree with it. And to my mind, this will never fructify, and it never should. Why, I'll tell you. Firstly, the entire concept paper is based on the fact that there is unemployment amongst the youth, and there is patriotism, and they want to serve. So let's make use of this opportunity. So firstly, you cannot be exploitative like that with the youth and treat them as cannon fodder, that because they're unemployed and because they're patriotic in nature, let's catch them over. Secondly, the idea behind it seems to avoid gratuity, which is paid after 5 years of service. Now, to avoid payment of gratuity and to pick up these people for 3 years and then sending them out, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. One should always remember that the problem with the finances, etc., is not with respect to one-time payouts such as gratuity or lump sum or golden handshake. Not at all. The government is not bothered about it. The government will never be bothered about it. The problem is with the ballooning pension bill. So, these small little payments or payouts, one-time payouts, which are not recurring in nature, absolutely no problem at all with the government. It's a drop in a huge wide ocean. Now we already have the short service scheme, which used to be operated at 5 years plus 5 years plus 4 years, and then they increased it to 10 years plus 4 years. Now minimum service required in the short service setup is 10 years, which leaves you neither here nor there, and in middle age you're left on the road. It's not a very balanced thing to have. The easiest way out is to get back on track the short service commission scheme with 5 plus 5 plus 4 system and link it with NPS and make it so attractive that a person who is even released after 10 years of service or 5 years of service has a financial backup of a gratuity, of an annuity of the NPS corpus or of an NPS pension, and the benefit of an ex-serviceman status which is given to him or her, and ready to take on the world at a young age. And for such issues, you need to have a well-rounded discussion with members of, with representatives, say, of the MOD, of the Department of Personnel and Training, of the PFRDA, of, a study group of an institution like the College of Defense Management, legal experts. These things, the RB and also our officers must realize that these things are to be handled by experts with deep knowledge, with 360-degree discussion, with stakeholder discussion. And there are many, many aspects to it. You cannot just, portray something as a great thing and then they say the industry will pick them up. Well, the army is not meant to feed the industry. We are not here to, we are here to defend the nation, and we want the best. And there never will be any dearth of applicants for any scheme in the army. But that does not mean that we turn out, we turn our, our expression and turn our senses towards something which is exploitative and which does not make any sense at all. And plus, if you want to reduce the pension bill, the SSC, the Short Service Commission, is the best thing. You increase your SS officers, grant them NPS, link it with NPS. This is what Mr. Manohar Parrikar also wanted, and simultaneously reduce the permanent cadre and increase the support cadre. Plus, also, since officers are not very high in number, introduce a similar scheme for Jawans, something called the Short Service Engagement Scheme. 10 years they serve. They go out with NPS. You give them skilling at the time of release so that they can. They have many options thereafter. They can go into a post-release civil employment again on NPS, or they can start their own vocation, or they can do just nothing and enjoy their corpus, whatever they want. They can enjoy their ex-serviceman status and also take up the reservation which is already there on the civil side. So that is the way to I would say to handle this thing, and it will ultimately give you maximum dividends in terms of the pension bill.
Following up on the short service commission idea, another idea which has been mooted and it's been discussed over the years by a lot of different stakeholders inside the army, outside the army, is how do you incentivize someone to take the short service commission or a short service engagement? One option would be, can these Jawans or officers be absorbed in central government service or central armed paramilitary services? Now we are hearing an idea where there's an inverse induction, where the central paramilitary forces will recruit someone, send them to the army for 6-7 years, and then send them back to the respective cadres. Do you think this idea is doable?
Absolutely not. Zero. See, that's why I again say that these in-house study groups make no sense unless you are aware of the regulatory practices, the rules on the civil side. You cannot have your imagination running wild like this. It's not an unruly horse. You cannot have utopian ideas or emotional ideas. Things have to be done within the existing regulatory and the service law framework. What is permissible and what is doable. Now, lateral absorption is a very good idea, recommended many times by several pay commissions and by several committees, but unfortunately, ultimately rejected. Now we are just flogging a dead horse again and again. We have to move beyond lateral induction and lateral absorption. The CAPFs and the MHA have time and again rejected the idea. You cannot force it down their throats. They say, and they have a valid point, that you cannot have military veterans, you cannot have them parachuting down their ranks and blocking their career progression in a different service. They have a point. Even with the military would say, oh, why not? Now, even within the military, if there's such a shift in a cadre or in a branch, they create so much of hullabaloo about it. And why do you expect another organization to welcome you with open arms? Again, I would say it is a very noble idea. But since it has been rejected, and I believe even the cabinet did not accept it after recommendation by one of the pay commissions, I think let's just let it go now, and let's look for other doable and practical things which are possible within the existing framework. For example, nobody is stopping you from raising another completely new force comprising military veterans. You can call it the National Reconstruction Force, National Veterans Reconstruction Force, like you have the Defense Security Corps under the Ministry of Defense. You can configure it with the existing system of IRB, the India Reserve Battalions, which are which are, I would say, like a joint venture between the center and the states. So you have existing systems, you have existing organizations, or you can create another new organization rather than having this utopian idea of shifting them to CRPF and BSF and IDB. And also, let's not forget that, sometimes they say, oh, they're trained in arms and equipment, and, the ethos of the police and the army is the same. You may think so. You may think so. But as I always say, that the similarities in certain cases end at the ceremonial drill and the military hierarchy or the uniform. The basic. I'm not saying that military veterans would not do well in the police. They may do well, but they may do well in other similar organizations and forces than the police, for example. The job of a soldier is to seek and destroy the enemy. The job of the police is to protect the community. So don't just scratch the surface and say that, oh, they wear uniform after 7 years, 8 years, let them go back to the police, or let the police wallahs come here. And it is not so simplistic. Let's not have such utopian ideas, and let's not just, as I said, let our dreams run wild. Do it in a structured manner. Identify the organizations or the central armed police forces where military veterans would fit in better than others. See if you can get another parallel force catered for, in case there is requirement, in case the Ministry of Home Affairs thinks so. Revitalize the Defense Security Corps. Right now, we talk of equal ranking in the civil side when military veterans are laterally absorbed on the civil side. But in the Defense Security Corps, even Havaldars are going in as sepoys. So revitalize and rationalize and harmonize your own organizations first, and find out practical solutions. Let's not stick to utopian ideas, I would say.
That's very succinctly put. Another thing that I want to really pick your brains on was, as someone who served in the Territorial Army, a lot of officers, a lot of committees have over the past few years recommended one way of reducing the standing manpower of the Indian Army would be to increase the size of the Territorial Army, especially in some static roles or reserve roles for which the Army doesn't really need a standing set of soldiers or battalions for, and they can only be called upon during, let's say, wartime or whenever they're required. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a practical idea? I remember General Huda had made this recommendation a couple of years ago once he had left service.
I think General Huda made a very, very valid point. But let me also say that in the 1940s, in 1949, the Territorial Army was incepted in India in present form. I think the envisaged strength was 2 lakhs for the regular army and 1.4 lakh for the Territorial Army. And today, the strength is almost 13 lakhs for the regular army and just about 45,000 infantry Territorial Army. So the idea has not, quite taken the shape in which it was expected to. That said, let's also not forget that the Territorial Army primarily is meant for those people who are already employed on the civil side, or who are self-employed professionals, or are in a civil government employment. So they come in for a few days in a year to, bear arms and not to bear arms, to refresh their military skills, so that in case of an emergency, a national emergency or war, they can bear arms for the nation. But what has happened over the years is that instead of TAizing the regular army, we are regularizing the TAs. I always use this phrase. So ultimately, the Territorial Army is now mostly manned by those people who are not actually employed on the civil side, provide them with employment wherever the need arises. However, let's remember that we should not steer away from the actual concept of Territorial Army, which is that it's a voluntary citizens force, wherein we take in employed or self-employed people, or people who are already in a mainstay civil vocation and who serve only for a few days in a year in the army, and who can bear arms, and we can really expand it in case of an emergency or in case of a requirement. Ultimately, I would like to see such a system wherein there is minimum dislocation of the civil career of a person who's serving the Territorial Army. While on the other side, in case the person can spare more time and he volunteers for full-time service, he be allowed to do so. He or she may be allowed to do so. Right now, good people are not joining Territorial Army. I mean, till the 90s. I mean, when we had started serving the army, the Territorial Army, you had very good people and absolutely people coming in with the aim of voluntary national service. But now people are not coming in. Good people are not, well-employed professionals are not coming because they say that we are neither here nor there, in the sense that you are embodied or mobilized in Territorial Army for, say, for 8, 9 months, 10 months, or for a year, and they say that we won't leave you. What will happen to the mainstay civil vocation? What will happen to the office? What will happen to that organization? So people say, oh, sorry, we cannot. And then if you have 2-3 months of training in the IMA and 2 months annual training camp and 1 month recruit training, they say that if I have to serve for 9-10 months in a year, I may as well join the regular army. Why should I join the Territorial Army? So we need to be very, very flexible. Territorial Army is a great idea, but we need to be very, very flexible in the sense that people who cannot serve, who cannot spare more than a few days in a year, must be encouraged to join. They should not be discouraged. People should be encouraged to join. They will form the bridge between the armed forces and the society. And we can expand the Territorial Army in the times of war. You have trained manpower. You just, within 24 hours, for example, at the time of Operation Parakram, the entire Territorial Army was mobilized, including, I was one of them. So we were all mobilized and we moved in. The entire TA was mobilized and deployed for war. What was expected to be war. So that is the actual concept of TA. And at the same time, if we have vacancies, and people are ready to serve full time and do regular duties, we say, okay, welcome, please do so. If your profession allows you, or say you're a farmer outside, or you have your own business and you can serve for the whole year, let's allow them. It should never be the situation that wherein the person who wants to serve full time, you tell him no, sit at home, and a person who cannot serve full time, you say no, please come. So let's have a very flexible attitude. And I think the new Director General Territorial Army is working on these lines, and he's trying to make the organization more vibrant. And even the CDS, I believe, is interested in making it more vibrant, and I sincerely hope it happens.
Major Singh, we are completely out of time, but I still want to touch upon my last question. I think it's the most controversial. I think, for the last few years, once OROP has been implemented, everyone from analysts to officials in the government keep complaining about, capex is reduced, revenue component is reduced, a lot of money is going to the pension section. But, even if with all the solutions that we discussed right now, short service commission, short service engagement, reducing numbers, increasing the size of the TA, but the number of people that we're currently paying pensions to is not going to reduce. We can reduce the number of people going into pension to a certain extent. How do you think, do you think there's any practical solution to this over the next few years as to how will the government be able to curtail this expense? It's only going to keep growing with, pay commissions, adjustments for inflation and everything else.
Not a very big deal. See, OROP is a very valid idea, a very valid concept, and it's an emotive concept, and it's a political promise. We cannot go back on it. So that is a red line we are never going to cross. OROP is going to remain the way it is for the existing beneficiaries. However, what can be done is those 3 things which I said. Number 1, outsourcing. So you reduce the pension bill. Number 2, increasing the retirement ages for Jawans in select trades, for Jawans and JCOs. Again, pension bill will be reduced. Thirdly, introducing short service engagement and expanding short service commission and placing them on the NPS. So, with time, reducing permanent cadre and giving fillip to this not auxiliary, but to the support cadre. So what will happen is that, right now you have 55,000 people retiring in a year who are going on OROP. Later on, the number will come down to 45,000. It may come down to 35,000 with more people being outsourced or more people being on short service engagement or short service commission if that happens. So ultimately, the pension bill will get reduced. This is not till infinity. Um, the pension bill with OROP is high, but people are not going to live forever. So it has to reduce. Once the numbers on OROP, the fresh numbers on OROP are reduced, the number will come down. Once uh, the people who are no more, over the years, there will be the numbers automatically would be coming down because of advancing age. So so all these measures combined, the pension bill will come down. However, I again reiterate that all this is to be done without heartburn. OROP is there to stay for the permanent cadre, for existing beneficiaries always, for new beneficiaries also. However, we need to come up with new terms of engagement which will not be exploitative and which will also be beneficial to the persons concerned, but entirely voluntary. It is not that you can force a person wants to join permanent commission, let him do so. You cannot force him to say, no, go in for short service commission. A person will go in for short service commission of his own volition, his or her, and he'll say, okay, I don't want to make the army my permanent career, but still I want to have a financial backup. I'll serve for 5 years or 10 years, get a pension under the NPS and move out and make my place in the civil world. So it's very much possible. However, again, we have to think within the regulatory framework and within the practicalities of what is possible, and not utopian ideas like TOD or the reverse induction or even lateral induction, lateral absorption now, because once it has been rejected so many times, no point harping on it again and again and again in various concept papers.
Thank you, Major Singh. We are completely out of time today, but thank you for enlightening us on some of these issues which have flummoxed some of our policymakers and political leaders. And I'm sure this is not going to be an issue which is going to die away very soon. So I'm sure we'll be chatting with you again soon. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Thank you.